If history were a palace drama, then Theodora would definitely not be the fragile heroine or the tragic supporting character. She was the ultimate lead, carrying the team, handling all kinds of political drama, and making an entire empire look up to her. Born into a family that had nothing but a performing bear, Theodora was once a low-tier actress, struggling at the very bottom of society. But she refused to accept her fate. From someone no one respected, Theodora rose straight to the throne as Empress of the Eastern Roman Empire, a plot twist more shocking than any TV series. Her husband, Emperor Justinian, was utterly smitten with her. Her enemies trembled before her sharp wit. And history? It had to dedicate an entire chapter to Theodora, a queen without a crown, a general without a sword, yet still an immortal legend. Let's begin. Theodora's childhood, poor but never powerless. If the world were a stage play, Theodora would never be the kind of supporting character who appears for a few moments and then disappears. From a young age, she already had the makings of a leading lady, one who suffered hardships but refused to be defeated by them. She was determined not to let fate cast her into some forgotten corner of history. Born into misfortune but never in silence, Theodora came into the world around the year 500 CE in Constantinople, modern-day Istanbul, Turkey, but instead of taking her first breath in a lavish palace, she was born in a bear cage. Why? Because her father, Acacius, was not a nobleman or a military general but a bear trainer in the imperial circus. And her mother? A poor dancer who performed at traveling fairs. In other words, Theodora wasn't just poor, she belonged to the lowest, most powerless class in Byzantine society. But the tragedy didn't stop there. When Theodora was still a child, her father died suddenly, leaving her mother alone with 3 daughters to feed. Following the classic strong widow trope, her mother took her children to the circus and begged the owner to take them in so they could have something to eat. But life isn't a fairy tale. The circus master coldly refused, as if to say, being poor is your problem. I'm not running a charity. She took her young daughter and knelt before the circus audience, begging for help. And then, a miracle happened, a round of applause erupted. The crowd, moved by her desperation, pressured the circus master until he had no choice but to accept Theodora and her sister as performers. And just like that, Theodora officially stepped into the spotlight, but not for fame or joy. She was there to survive. Growing up in the circus, Theodora learned every trick to stay afloat, singing, dancing, acting, and even making audiences laugh just to earn a few coins. But the harsh reality was this: being a performer in those days was far from glamorous. Female entertainers weren't respected, they were seen as nothing more than cheap amusement. In Byzantine society, being an actress was nearly synonymous with being a courtesan. There was no such thing as honored artists, only scorned entertainers. But Theodora was not one to accept her fate. If she was born at the bottom, she would climb her way to the top. And her plan? To change her destiny. She left Constantinople and embarked on a journey across different lands, from Syria to Egypt. Along the way, she didn't just refine her stage skills, she sharpened her intellect, learned about politics, and mastered the art of strategy. Most importantly, she met Justinian, the future emperor of Byzantium. A turning point was coming, one that would transform Theodora from a street girl into a true palace queen. 2. When a poor girl meets a prince's love at first sight. After years of performing across Constantinople and Egypt, Theodora suddenly vanished from the stage. Her audience was bewildered, and the rumors spread like wildfire. Did she quit show business? Was she kidnapped by a wealthy patron? Did she become the owner of a circus? But the truth was more shocking than any dramatic script. Theodora had decided to reinvent herself. No one knows for sure why she left her life as a performer. Maybe she was tired of the struggle, or maybe she realized she wasn't meant to be a background character, she was destined to be the leading lady of power. In short, Theodora changed careers, changed her image, and changed her entire destiny. She traveled to a monastery in Alexandria, Egypt, and lived for a time as a part-time nun, reflecting on her fate and planning her grand return, this time, as a more refined and formidable version of herself. And then, fate set the stage for her ultimate comeback. On a fateful day, Theodora returned to Constantinople, but she was no longer just a circus performer meant to amuse the crowd. She had transformed into a sharp, intelligent, and utterly captivating woman. Prince Justinian, the nephew of Emperor Justinian, laid eyes on Theodora, and was instantly struck by love at first sight. But what made Justinian so captivated by her? Her beauty? Of course. But the imperial palace was filled with countless beautiful women, so why was Theodora the one who stole the prince's heart? Her intelligence? Now that was her ultimate weapon. Theodora wasn't just beautiful, she was exceptionally smart, sharp-witted, and politically astute, more than capable of outmaneuvering even the most seasoned court officials. Her strong personality? Absolutely, Theodora was no delicate, soft-spoken lady, she was a general without a sword, someone whose words alone could crush her opponents. Justinian was utterly obsessed and determined to marry Theodora. But life isn't a fairy tale, and a massive obstacle stood in their way. Byzantine law forbade members of the royal family from marrying actresses. Back then, circus performers and dancers were classified alongside courtesans. The imperial court was outraged, and officials whispered behind Justinian's back, "Has the prince been bewitched? Why would he choose a woman from such a lowly background? Would an ordinary person back down after hearing this? Maybe. But Theodora? Never." This power couple was ready to break the rules. Justinian persuaded Emperor Justin I to change the law, allowing royalty to marry actresses. Out of love for his nephew, the emperor finally agreed to amend this long-standing restriction. And in the year 525, Theodora officially became Justinian's wife, one step away from becoming the future empress of the Eastern Roman Empire. From a poor circus performer to the most powerful woman in Byzantium, if TikTok had existed back then, the "from rags to queen" trend would have gone viral across the entire empire. 3. When the Empress carried the team and turned a rebellion into history. In the year 527, Justinian ascended the throne as emperor. Normally, empresses were expected to sit elegantly, embroider flowers, sip tea, and host lavish banquets. But Theodora? She was not your average empress. She wasn't just the emperor's wife, she was the most powerful queen of the house in Byzantine history. Historical records state that anyone who entered the imperial court, whether a high-ranking minister or a mighty general, had to bow in caution before Theodora. And then, the moment that would cement her legend finally arrived. In the year 532, the Nika rebellion erupted. To understand this chaos, you first need to know one thing: Byzantines in those days were obsessed with chariot racing, even more than modern people are obsessed with football. Green Heart the Greens versus Blue Heart the Blues, these were the two most fanatical factions, supporting the two biggest chariot racing teams in Constantinople. But instead of just cheering from the stands like normal fans, they decided to lead an armed uprising instead. A rebellion, a historic betrayal, and an iron-willed empress. The Greens and the Blues, two factions that despised each other like cats and dogs. But that year, Justinian made a critical mistake in handling riots at the Hippodrome, angering both sides. In a historic turn of events, the sworn enemies set aside their rivalry and joined forces to overthrow the emperor. Constantinople was engulfed in flames, and the streets echoed with deafening chants, "Nika! Nika! Victory! Victory!" Realizing the dire situation, Justinian panicked and began planning his escape. And then, Theodora stepped in and snapped the entire imperial court back to reality. The empress rose to her feet, adjusted her crown, and delivered a legendary line: "I do not wish to flee. If your majesty wants to run, then go. But as for me, I would rather die in this palace than live in disgrace." The room fell silent. Even Justinian, who had been paralyzed with fear, stood frozen in shock. And in that moment, as his mind rebooted, the emperor chose to fight back. The plan to crush the rebellion: Justinian secretly ordered his troops to block all exits of the Hippodrome, where over 30,000 rebels were still chanting in defiance. Then, his army stormed in. With no way out, the rebels were slaughtered to the last man, one of the bloodiest crackdowns in Byzantine history. Theodora carried the team and saved the throne. In a single day, Theodora secured Justinian's reign and erased the rebellion from history. And from that moment on, everyone knew, in the Byzantine Empire, there wasn't just an emperor. There was also an iron empress named Theodora. Theodora's great reforms. Theodora wasn't just a strong-willed empress, she was a visionary leader far ahead of her time. Championing women's rights. She banned the sale of women as slaves. She enforced laws protecting women from domestic violence. She provided jobs for impoverished women to prevent them from being exploited. Social reforms. She ensured housing for the poor. She sponsored monasteries and charitable organizations. She oversaw the construction of the Hagia Sophia, the grandest symbol of the Byzantine Empire. Theodora didn't just manage the imperial court, she transformed the entire Eastern Roman society. Theodora's departure, but her legacy lives on. In the year 548, Theodora passed away at the age of 48, possibly due to cancer. The entire Byzantine Empire was shaken, everyone knew they had just lost a legendary queen. And Justinian? He never remarried. For the next 17 years, he remained devoted to Theodora. Was it love? Or perhaps he simply knew that no one could ever replace such a formidable empress. Even in death, Theodora's legacy endured. For centuries, people continued to remember her not just as a Byzantine empress, but as a true leader. Born into poverty, Theodora rewrote her fate with intelligence and determination. Byzantine historians praised her. She came from the lowest ranks of society, but when she departed, she had become a legend. Without Theodora, Justinian might have been nothing more than a weak king. To sum it up, Theodora is living proof of one simple truth: being poor is not scary. Being poor and intelligent? That's a real game changer. Your background doesn't define your destiny, only courage and wit can turn you into a legend.